Alabama. How does he buy Dash? What's that initial process like? Are you there?
Yes,
Did you?
there's a connection.
Okay, good to learn on this. So, guys, I'm doing Jitsi and Dash. So this is the first time I'm using that in conjunction with an interview. So I apologize for this interruption. I think we're back now. I'm seeing a yellow bar. So my question is for the person that is completely new to crypto, how do I buy Dash? What's my first point of entry here?
Yeah, so there's quite a few ways of getting it. I I believe there's a credit card solution, which is usually what it depends on like how low, how simple the level is. So the most popular on ramp for crypto in the U.S. is Coinbase, and Coinbase supports Dash. So if you go to Coinbase.com and then sign up for account, link your bank account, and you can just buy some. It's pretty easy, but a lot of people aren't. See how I phrase this the right way, but um, basically a lot of people the the ceiling of complexity is where can I put in my credit card details, and there are some places that you can buy Dash with a credit card. The service is called Simplex. Now I have to find. I'm not sure if that's just on um, if that's just directly from the Simplex site or if it's integrated into other things. But I will find that and I'll post in the description of wherever this is posted, and make sure you have that link. But if you buy with a credit card, it'd be like an extra like 4% fee or something on that, which isn't that bad. But I would probably go to something like Coinbase. Uphold is the one I tend to recommend, um, because it has a lot of the better rates and it's pretty easy to use. It's from what I've heard, the turnaround of customer support is not quite as fast as Coinbase. So that's the only drawback. But I do know that Uphold does have a debit card in the US. So you'd be
Okay.
able to, like, say, sign up with Uphold, link your bank account, and start buying, and then you can actually spend it from a card. Even though it's not completely fully living on crypto type thing, it is a great bridge between the two.
Yeah, I've
In fact,
yeah. I,
one more thing. In fact, Uphold is in the official Dash wallet. So if you under the settings of the Dash wallet, um, the top buy and sell Dash, and you can link your bank account. So right in the Dash wallet, you can link a way to buy and sell right there, as a sort of way to make it. But anyway,
oh,
to
good.
recap,
Okay.
Uphold and Coinbase, and I will look for a simplex option to buy with a credit card to link for if that's where you're at.
That's great. No, I think that's very helpful. And which you actually mentioned that when you travel, you often get cash. So presumably you have some kind of debit. You use a debit card for that. Is that
No, so by my experiment, which I may um, kind of acquiesce to using some. Basically, over the last 4 years, I have not used any service with AML KYC requirements. I.e., if I have to show an ID, I'm not using it. It's just pure crypto stuff. So, for example, if I was to go to Coinbase, they want your ID because they want your bank information, and I don't have a bank. But even if you could use it, I've just stayed away from that kind of stuff.
yep?
So I've purely gone to crypto ATMs. Um, there was a hilariously named a franchise of them called Shitcoins Club, and for some reason I don't know why they decided to use that name, but there's quite a few of those in Europe, for example, in like major shopping malls and go use. There's a site called Coin ATM Radar, which shows all the crypto ATMs near you. There's quite a few other sites that have a bunch of listings, but that's the one that shows all like the actual machines where you show up with a wad of cash, put them in, and then get the crypto out. And there's far fewer ATMs that do the other way around, where you could send some Dash or some Bitcoin or whatever, and then get some paper out. But they do exist. So that's usually what I've been doing when traveling. For people that don't have that compunction against using your using any service that wants your ID, uh, there's a few crypto debit card services, like again the one with Uphold. So if you're going to look into a complete sort of ecosystem, how to do it as easy as possible, uh, the main Dash wallet has Uphold in it, to where you can buy and sell right into there, and then there you can get a debit card to actually swipe for places that don't take it directly, and that should be just like a one-stop shop that's really about as idiot-proof as they come.
Okay. Well, that's very useful. How have you seen the landscape change? I mean, since you started this in 2016, are there a lot more places? I mean, I mean, I know there was the hysteria the end of
Mm-hmm.
2017, 2018, but what would you say kind of merchant adoption is looking like now? Um,
So it's one of those things where, just like freedom, I don't think that the world gets more or less free in a very linear way. It's a very uneven way. In a lot of ways, we have, had surrendered a lot of freedoms and paid more in taxes and things like that over the last few decades. At the same time as firearms ownership rights have gone way higher, gotten much better. So it's always uneven. So to use that as a sort of example, um, definitely crypto infrastructure and adoption as a whole is at the highest point now it's ever been. Now, as far as places you can spend it directly, especially in person, it's not at the highest point right now. It's not at a low point, but from what I was able to from what I was able to tell, the first highest peak was somewhere around late 2016, early 2017, when the entire crypto ecosystem was all rallied behind Bitcoin, which is 85 to 90% of the market. And the fees were still low enough that people were still trying to use it like someone would use something like Dash or Bitcoin Cash today. Uh, and there have since been a few big businesses that stopped accepting it. Like, for example, um, which was it? There was a which was the major travel site
was it
that used to use it
Expedia?
as XP.
I think it was
Yeah,
Expedia.
Expedia. Yes, Steam, which was the game platform. I think Dell and Microsoft accepted it too, and they all those dropped off over time. Um, there was, and then mid, I would say, or in 2018 and 19, there was a lot of progress with mostly, I would say, heavily Dash and Bitcoin Cash in mom and pop type merchants around the world. And because of market lows again, um, I think that a bunch of those have dropped off. The tragedy has been a lot of that was in Venezuela, and it's still a hot spot for crypto. It's still heavily Dash dominated, from my understanding, but because of the upheaval there, if you have, say, 1,000 small business, or in this case like 3,000 small businesses that accepted crypto in the Caracas area, if most of those small businesses just go belly up within with a year, because the whole economy is crashing, that does kind of tend to harm adoption a little bit. So I would say we're not quite at that absolute peak, but in terms of, for example, the infrastructure of services, like how many different places you have to get in and out of it, how many different tools are there. So for those so inclined, accounting and tax services for cryptocurrency that are much more comprehensive. There's just a lot more of that out now. There's a lot more like in betweens. Like, so for example, there's when I started, there was maybe one or two, um, maybe not when I absolutely started, but there was a one, maybe two travel agencies that accepted Bitcoin only. And I do remember when I started living mostly off of Dash in earlier 2017, there I did have to buy one plane ticket with Bitcoin. I had to switch it back over. But now there's, just that accept Dash alone, there's like at least five that come to mind right now. So if you're paying for say plane tickets and hotel rooms and things like that, or if you're doing gift cards through major retailers and stuff, the adoption is absolutely bigger than ever. It's just become much more of an infrastructural development and much less of a five places down the street from me. You can walk in and the guy has a little QR code thing you can scan and go pay there. That's that kind of ebbed a little bit, but it's still probably the best time that it's been. I think that cryptocurrency has gotten a lot more integrated into other things other than simply paying for things. And so I think that the adoption of this technology as it is definitely at its all-time high. As far as paying for everyday stuff, it's at a high, but probably not the all-time high.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And there are some other follow up questions related to this, which is, so if you're living off this, how do you deal with the large fluctuations in price? Because I mean, it is volatile. Even on a good day, it's volatile.
Yeah. So there are, well, let me put it this way. I'd like to equate it to running a small business, in that your revenue on a day-to-day basis is not consistent always. You can have good days, you can have bad days. Of course, right now in the middle of the pandemic, there's a lot of people are going through some very rough times. I'm very sad for that. But even on the better circumstances, there's ups and downs. And if you just spend all your money on when you when you have it, and then you can just go belly up when you don't. It's sort of a similar type of thing. So basically, if you zoom out on any cryptocurrency price chart, you see the ups and downs. You can kind of smooth it out and see just an upward trend, generally speaking. So, say you get paid, and first off, especially when you're in a bear market where the prices are probably going to be going down, they're trending down for a while. You should probably pay all your bills right away. So as soon as you get it, before the value of that goes down, which is honestly what happens in Venezuela with the crashing currency from friends I know there. They basically just spend it right away. As soon as they get it, they spend it. So
Yep.
you spend whatever you need to, and then just try to live lean. And then when everything goes up, there are some things you can time. For example, when the markets hit a new high, then it's like, okay, well, maybe now would be a good time to either cash out, or if you're not doing that, you're just buying things. Maybe now's the time to get a new computer. Now's the time to make sure have you pay off your car, your loans, or whatever. Now is a good time to update everything, and so then when the markets go down again, you don't have to really spend.
Yep.
So it's basically you ride the wave where you spend when it goes up, you use it. When it goes down, you try not to. And of course, there are some in betweens of when it's low, you do have to spend something on bills, but you can kind of manage that. And it's hardest if you're living like paycheck to paycheck and don't really have much choice in like how much of your wealth or income you spend. But if you have some kind of savings, then it definitely trends kind of upward with that.
How do you deal with? Do you pay rent with crypto?
Yeah, so that's a there are a few places, and of course, as with everything, if you know your landlord personally, you can probably arrange some sort of a thing. There are dozens of units in New Hampshire that do accept um, rent directly in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Dash. Um, I don't live in one of those spots because I live with a girlfriend who does not live the way I do, and so we just give her the crypto, and there you go.
Yep.
So that's kind of how that shakes out. But that's like a personal choice that I like to live right here, and if I was living on my own, I'd go straight for a place that literally took that, or I'd be more aggressive with the landlord about, hey, you know what, I'll give you an extra so and so a month if you just do this little service that lets you convert the stuff right away. And it might be a good, it might be a good, as a side note, a good chance to do something like that now because people are hurting, and especially you have risks associated with writing a paper check or things like that. and any kind of electronic billing system that works and is convenient and easy and final right away and irreversible like cryptocurrency tends
Yeah.
to work out. So yeah, that might be a good way to finally swing them. But yeah, so it is very possible. I don't happen to be doing that right now. There are some bill pay services. Um, there's something called Lamium, which I do not know if it works correctly in the U.S., but it's basically a system that connects crypto buyers and sellers to basically what happens is if I want to pay my rent with Dash and someone wants to buy Dash, they just pay my rent for me, and then and then they get the Dash.
Okay.
So it works through by using a random not random but an private individual as a third party. It kind of works where you can sort of do that. I remember they're relatively new, and I know that it's much easier in Europe where the bill pay systems are much more streamlined. The U.S. has a very antiquated financial system, and so I know they're big there. I've heard rumors that they were operating in the U.S., but I'm not exactly sure. I'll have to follow up on that.
Okay. A couple more questions here. Well, is crypto worth anything in a crashing economy?
Mm. I wrote something about that a few weeks ago that I'll probably have to share about digital cash's value proposition. If you noticed, when the economy crashed, of course, stocks and things like that took a big tumble first. And then even gold and precious metals like that, sound money, took a tumble too, because guess what? You cannot buy toilet paper with that. You can't buy your groceries directly with gold. I mean, you could. I mean, I have this little gram of gold I keep on my desk, and I could probably take that, and it has value. But like, can you imagine going to, say, a grocery store and just saying, here's for the groceries. I trust me, it's gold. Like, it's not going to work out that well.
No.
So people go straight into cash during a crisis because that's what gets them what they absolutely need to assuage their fears of starving to death. So cryptocurrencies right now are theoretical and speculative assets largely. Despite all the good stuff we might say about them, despite that they work well, they're still kind of a luxury in people's minds. Like, if people are scared, they're probably going to sell all their cryptocurrency to make sure they can pay their bills in the short term. Now, if you could pay all your bills with cryptocurrency, which is why I'm a huge advocate for, at least for the coins that are designed for that purpose, for mass adoption, um, then I think that in a collapsing economy, people would be flocking to cryptocurrencies because it's something that holds its value, that you're not going to get shut down or seized or something like that, and you can still buy everything you absolutely need. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is in a case of infrastructural collapse where you have the electrical grid going down, internet services disrupted, things like that, where you're kind of back to analog or back to paper and back to ham radios or whatever you got, in which case probably people would be trying to barter precious metals at that point. But that's the world would be in so much trouble if that happened that losing the actual value of savings is probably the least of our worries in that situation.
Yep. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Here's another one, slightly off topic, but what is your opinion on decentralized exchanges and privacy coins?
Yeah, so in a roundabout sort of a way, I don't really believe in privacy coins because that it's kind of like saying, um, like it's kind of like saying, what do you think of cars with windshield wipers? I think they all need them. I think if anything you're going to be using to send value around has to have some sort of privacy enhancing um, property. And so obviously there's some that are very geared towards this, but I think that's kind of almost like a one trick pony type of a thing where it's a fantastic feature to have. It's more, if you don't have it, it's more like it's not privacy coins versus the rest. It's more transparency coins versus what should be the rest. So basically, I think it's absolutely essential to have privacy because when you send a cryptocurrency transaction, there's no linkage between that and your identity necessarily, but it's very transparent. Anyone can look it up. Anyone can see this went from point A to point B, and if you do stuff like you shop online with cryptocurrency, and someone's managed to correlate that with, say, an email address or a shipping address, they can start to really find out who is actually sending this, and then that's even banks are more private than that if you think about it, because even though basically all your financial history is in the hands of a company that also can cooperate with law enforcement or whatever else and divulge it, or can get hacked, to the just general public, it's not out there. Now, so that's why, one reason I like Dash is that you can actually obscure through a special functionality, obscure transactions so they're not as easy to trace. There's quite a few others that are doing stuff like this right now, like Zcash, Monero, Grin and Beam are there too. Um, Zcoin is another pioneer in the space that does a lot in that. And also, even in other coins like Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, there are mixing services that work to sort of obscure transactions, even though they're not baked into the actual protocol itself. Even though it's kind of like you have to use a second service with it, there are still ways that you can sort of shuffle around your transaction. It's kind of like, say you have a $10 bill, a $5 bill, and then 5 ones, and they all have your name on it. And what you do is you trade with 3 other people that also have that exact amount. You just swap them around so you have the same final amount of money,
Yep.
but it's all from other people, so you can't really tell whose it is when it gets paid. You can't really trace it. There's a lot of other services that work there. So essentially, I think privacy is absolutely essential. If you're not taking care of it or looking into how to take care of it, you're making a big mistake. Decentralized exchanges it's kind of one of those holy grail type things. Um, Generally speaking, right now, there's a trade off between usability and the decentralization, to where um, basically, if you want something to just work and work well, and it needs to do those two things, it needs to work and work well, be easy to use for any kind of critical mass of people to use it. You kind of have to, or it's easier to have a company or something like that controlling it, just to make sure everything's smooth and getting all the technical difficulties out of there. So when you're running your own full node and you're doing all this other fancy tech stuff, uh, it tends to be much more difficult to do that, much more clunky of an experience. And obviously, there's like the sliding scale of like how decentralized can you get while it's still usable. And I should say that each passing year that this stuff gets better, um, it becomes easier. It becomes more likely that you can stay decentralized and have a good user experience. So, for example, for people who want to kind of see what the future hopefully looks like in this area, I would encourage people to download the library client, LBRY, and run it. And of course, there's some, you got to start up and whatever, and just watch videos and content on that, and then go to lbry.tv, which is the more centralized solution that the company library runs, and compare the user experiences between the two. And they're very similar. It's like using the decentralized ways, only slightly clunkier. And so, on decentralized exchanges, which I think conceptually are extremely important, right now there's not a lot, especially when you're talking about trading for fiat currency. They're not quite there yet to where you're going to get a critical mass of people using them. But at some point in the future, I hope that they will be usable enough to where that happens. Right now, I mean, the best kind of solution you can do is trust exchanges as little as you need to, and try to not use the more susceptible, the more suspicious ones that have done some more sketchy things, and just anywhere you can do peer-to-peers, and you know a person who has cryptocurrency or cash, and you just trade right between them. That's probably best for now, but as soon as I see a good decentralized exchange that just works really well, I'll be quick to recommend it.
Yep. Well, you brought up a good point there because for a lot of people that are very new at cryptocurrency, this is something that I know a lot of people that have lost money on holding their crypto on exchanges, and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you definitely want to have own your own crypto and have it in your own wallet and keep that safe and secure and possibly even in cold storage, depending upon the situation. Because I mean, a tragic number of people that have lost pretty substantial amounts of crypto. Um, I guess the last question here is why is crypto? Well, I guess it's why or why is crypto better than fiat, and against what currency
Mm-hmm.
is it most stable? Which
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tricky um, prospect. So, against what is it more stable? Um, Stable is it's not necessarily stable at this stage of development for a couple reasons. First off, is it's new and it's small market cap compared to say the whole entire supply of gold out there. So it moves. It's easier to move up and down, and also it's not widely used for just buying and selling things. And so, because of that, a lot of people are using it in anticipation of the price being something different the next day than the day before. Whereas, say I buy, let's just say um, one Bitcoin is $8,000. And if I buy one and then I spend it and I save a bunch of money by doing that, I don't care that it goes to 7,920 in the meantime if I save more than that. Using it, the utility I derive is more than that. And so you'll have you have fewer people trying to game the system. You'll game it up and down to just speculate on it. So, but as far as the value, I mean, check, pick a coin of choice, preferably one that has been around since um, at least the beginning of 2017, so at least like 3 years, and just chart the USD performance of that over time. And you'll see almost all of it has been up on the whole. It's up and down, and obviously it's not extremely stable, but if you're looking at the long-term progress of the asset, it's probably going to be going up. Um, Now, of course, that on a day-to-day type of thing, if you bought Bitcoin at $20,000 per coin late 2017, you're not back up to where you're still at like under half that value. But you know, wait another year, we'll see what happens with that. Now, why is it better than fiat? So the idea of the idea of fiat is so first off, what fiat means is by dictate. This is money because someone says it is. Someone says this is what you're going to use to trade. And anything that is dictated like that can, of course, be manipulated in some way. And being able to have something that the actual free market decides what the value is inherently better than that because um, it's not not open to that sort of a thing. Especially a competitor can arise if it starts to fail, and then you can use that instead. Um, Cryptocurrency, of course, as something that anyone can create, anyone can run part of the infrastructure, anyone can move it around without permission. Because of that, it becomes far harder for someone to get control over the whole thing and just do crazy manipulative things with it. It's just a lot more difficult. Now, the big attractive thing about, say, cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Dash and things like that is a fixed supply. Now, there's been discussion of whether a completely capped supply is beneficial or not, but the point is it inflates at a very slow rate. And so basically say you have $100 and the Federal Reserve prints more money year after year and they basically let's just say the same value for the whole existence of dollars. Um, the say it is now spread amongst more units, but you don't get more of those units. Those get printed and someone else takes it. It's like doing a stock split, but you only keep the one unit and everyone else gets the rest of it. So it inherently devalues what you have over time. And so in cryptocurrency, it's kind of inflation sort of works the same way in that someone creates the say miners create more of it, and all the mining rewards go out to those people, and so therefore the percentage of the pie that your units have go down by just holding on to it. But because it's such a low rate, it's much lower than say the US dollar, especially right now. It's way lower than US dollar right now. It holds its value much better. Now there are some coins, so Dash keeps popping up, but anything that's like a one could say a staking coin, and there's a lot of aspects to that. So don't take this as a full throated endorsement of that. But by holding on to it, you can get some of that back. So if the dollar got inflated year after year, that the supply of dollars got doubled every year, you wouldn't care that much if you got your supply of the dollars doubled, because that wouldn't be taking away from your value. So that's another way of kind of thinking of that. So that's kind of why cryptocurrencies are better, is because they hold their value better because of, again, aside from momentary fluctuations, long term they hold their value better because they cannot be the fixed supply ones cannot be manipulated like that, and they can't be controlled, and you can't have someone fundamentally mess with the whole currency and upset your whole savings. And that's something that's a lot scarier than some people realize. It's something that was etched in my mind. So I grew up in the north of Mexico, and my parents had a bunch of old pesos because there's the peso crisis of the mid 90s, and they reissued the currency. And so there's a bunch of coins that just, cleaning out grandma's house, there's a bunch of coins just aren't worth anything anymore because they just made new ones. And of course, that was the same thing in India when they took out a lot of bills from circulation. So then those just, all of a sudden, it's just not worth anything. And that's a very scary prospect, that if someone actually lives in that kind of situation where they can just take stuff out of circulation, put others back, they can just decide that, oh, this whole currency is just not worth anything anymore, and we're switching to a different one, and then that can be very scary. And so those are the big reasons why cryptocurrency is better than current systems.
Yep. No, that makes sense. How worried are you about what the Federal Reserve is doing right now with the U.S. dollar?
Depends on, so how much do I think it's a bad thing? Absolutely, I think it's an awful thing. How worried am I personally? Well, I have very little exposure. I have, like, let's just say, I mean, for practical purposes, I have zero exposure to dollars. I have no dollars. So whatever happens to that directly does not affect me negatively. Indirectly, it can affect me negatively in that it can damage the whole economy, and of course, a poor country um, makes me not as well off. You have less opportunity, less, you know, fewer people willing to pay for things, and on another note, the seesaw effect. If it's just if it's a whole scale economic collapse, everyone's not doing very well. But if it's just a collapse of the currency itself, then things that aren't that currency, of course, go up not only relative to it, but people start demanding. The market demand goes to things that aren't that and don't have those issues. So, for example, precious metals and cryptocurrencies, I would expect to go up in value both in dollar terms, both in dollar amounts and in purchasing power. So, basically, I'm trying to tell everyone I can about the disastrous effects of potential hyperinflation coming around the corner, and how they can kind of get out of it, the various ways they can do that. And I don't expect anyone to really do anything about it in the short term, but when you start seeing some prices go far higher than people remember them being, then people are going to start remembering what they heard and just say, you know what, maybe I'll move into something different. So I think it's bad on the whole. Me personally, I'm not really that scared because it doesn't affect me directly. it could be good for people like me, but I'm not anticipating profiting off of a crisis. You know.
No, I understand. I mean, I recommend it to people. I mean, I pulled all my money out of the banks and I pulled my money out of the market long before the crash. And then a lot of people are like, well, if I pull my money out of the bank, then what do I do with it? And then that's the follow up question, which to me it's crypto or precious metals, but that's obviously a longer conversation. Even with precious metals, you want to own the physical metal, not
Yeah.
paper, because that's turning out to be there's a big discrepancy in price there.
Yeah. There's a few places that will sell physical precious metals for cryptocurrency, and so that kind of makes it
Hmm.
easier to where if you and I know there's a few gold and silver coin shops locally to me that do that, but that kind of makes it to where you can kind of move back and forth between those two, but it's kind of in the same realm of, this is useful. And so, I mean, this is going to be useful in retaining its value over time. So I would definitely, you know, and it's at the very least a good impetus for people to start thinking about security and investments, which, let's be honest, I mean, I don't know how the rest of the world operates, but in the US of A, very few people invest. Most people just have the money in their bank account that pays the bills, and if they have a surprise $1,000 charge they have to pay, it's financially hard for them. It's a hardship. So I would encourage people to start thinking about investments and things and looking into it. And of course, it's not like, oh, I'm going to throw it all into crypto right now. And then the markets go down 10, 20%. And then they need that money to feed their family right then. And then it's terrible for them. I don't think something like that is good at all. But I think people should research and look into what the market does and figure out how to make an educated hedge into other assets. But and also, if you're going to move into cash, if you're going to take cash out, like your paper money, out of the bank to where they could just not have it, to where you can actually have it, there's a reason why banks got created to begin with, which is secure storage of funds instead of having your house robbed and someone just empties out your pillowcases of all the hundreds you have stuffed in there. And so, if you're going to if you're going to be your own bank in any kind of a way, whether it's with digital money or paper money that's not going to be worth something someday, or precious metals, you have to be prepared to take care of your own security and the risks that kind of go along with that. And that's the one of the benefits of cryptocurrency is if you store it the right way, it can be very hard to locate and steal and compromise. Because all you have to do is write down, say, 12 to 24 words somewhere, and if someone gets those words, they get the money. If they don't get the words, they don't get the money. And so, the if you have a big safe full of gold, say, even if it's not a safe, if it's just in the corner of your closet, it's a lot easier to just dig around and then find something like that and just be like, haha, I got it. Rather than like are you going to check every single shirt pocket of every single suit that's hung up for a little piece of paper that has some words? Are they in the right order? How many are decoys? Like, it's is some people memorize it, which I think is a very risky move to do. But hey, um, fun fact: this has crypto in it. I don't know if anyone can see this, but this is an artwork that has a little QR code in there that you can. I did not load it, so don't try to rob my house, please. But that has a Bitcoin wallet in it. You can send Bitcoin in there and store it in the artwork. And there's a little sticker on the back that you take off to um, retrieve it. So for people that don't know what that is, that could be, and I don't mind telling people because I'm not going to keep anything in there, but you could have your fortune just stuffed away in that painting and no one would ever know.
Yep, that's very cool. I'm doing something with yeah, I've seen these physical Bitcoin. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen those, and they're doing that with Ravencoin. I don't know if there's if that's a Dash thing either, but so you've mentioned a lot about Dash, but for from the standpoint of doing day-to-day purchases, if you're actually going to try to use crypto as money, you also mentioned Bitcoin Cash. Are those really
Mm-hmm.
the only two? Because I can tell you from personal experience, Bitcoin is not usable. As it's worse than it was in 2017. Even now with limited transaction volume, it took 8 hours for me to clear a transaction recently. So
Yeah. So it's I would say those are the two that are actively focused on being used. Now, so I would probably I would probably use both of them or have both of them on hand or access because there's like a Venn diagrams of where they're able to be used and there is overlap, but there is some exclusion as well. There's some services that only have one or the other. So for example, Bitrefill, which is what I use most, um, does not use Bitcoin Cash at all, and I think it's because it's for political reasons. I think the people that run that don't believe in Bitcoin Cash, and so they purposely exclude it. But for whatever reason, that just means that I'd have to use Dash on something like that. And then on the other side, there are services such as Purse.io, which is an Amazon gateway. Now, Bitrefill also does sell Amazon gift cards, so I can buy anything off of Amazon, anything in the world with Dash. Purse has some discounts in there, and they only accept Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Now, the way we kind of talk about usability, so both of those have very low fees, like negligible at this point. Um, if you ever swipe a credit card and it goes through, it doesn't really go through. It shows up enough for the merchant to let go of the good, and then you're on your merry way. But it doesn't settle. It doesn't finalize until days later, usually. And if you ever look at your debit card, again, this is all my memories from 2016 and before. If you look at your debit card, your bank account, there's a few pending charges for
yep.
a while until they settle. So cryptocurrencies work the same way, and Bitcoin initially cut down on that time a whole lot, where it's like even 10, maybe 20 minutes instead of several days. It's where it shows up right away, but it could still be manipulated. Now, for whatever reason, cryptocurrencies are not. A lot of people don't trust them as much when they just show up, especially for large amounts. They wait until they settle many days later in order to fully trust the transaction. Um, Now, Dash is unique in that I wouldn't say unique in that like no other project comes anywhere close, but within under 2 seconds, a transaction can be considered final. And so that means if you want to deposit, say, $100,000 worth of Dash on an exchange or whatever, a large chunk of money, the exchange, if it's an exchange that recognizes that technology, where there's a growing number of exchanges that are giving Dash the second look that it deserves to sort of do that, they'll accept that and credit your balance instantly. Now, with Bitcoin Cash, they'd wait until there's some confirmations. But if you're going to buy, say, a coffee or a smaller item, most places will just say, "Yep, it went through. Here you go," even though it's not finalized for another 10 or so minutes. Now, recently there was a block reward halving, which for the newbies out there is very technical. Basically, a technical thing happened with Bitcoin Cash, and some blocks took 10 times as long to come through. So if you're waiting on that confirmation today, you might have been waiting, over an hour, like an hour and a half, instead of like 10 minutes. But that's just for that kind of thing. So for the best user experience, I would probably, if you can use Dash, it'll go through right away and be reliable right away, especially with the services that that specifically recognize that part of it. Now, there's a lot of ones that don't accept Dash, in which case you would use Bitcoin Cash, and there's vice versa. So I would kind of recommend that. Now, in New Hampshire and in South America and in Western Europe is a lot of Dash activity. And Bitcoin Cash is more if you're going to, say, Australia and Japan and some places like that. There's like different hotspots, and I'm sure the same works with any other kind of like payment service. So, yeah, that's kind of the long-winded answer for that. But basically, those are the ones that if you're trying to use it as everyday money, you're going to get the furthest on, by a huge margin.
Okay. Great. Well, this has been incredibly informative. I mean, I've got quite a few notes here, and I'm going to update the description of it with all of the resources that you mentioned. Are there any other kind of final thoughts that you have that you want to share with this group?
Yes, I would definitely say, uh, this is a this is a radically new system for a radically new world. And I kind of had this conversation recently where I noted a lot of people get a lot of their learning on how the world works concluded by their early 30s. And then they just sort of coast through the rest of life on what they already know. And that, oh, you kids are doing things different. Back in my day, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And you're able to sort of make it through lifespan that way. The world is changing so fast that, I mean, maybe it's just that I'm getting old, but things are changing so much that now things I didn't think they were there, I thought they were one way, and now they're very different the next day. You have to be on top of this. And a lot of it is trying to make this stuff usable for everyday people, but also everyday people are a different kind of people, and it might not be you. So this technology might never make sense to you in the way you think of things today. So please try to get educated on how everything like this works, and go become a student again. Start trying, and the best way of learning anything is by doing. So get some in small amounts if you don't care, but get like $20, $50 worth of something, send it around, find a way to back it up, practice with it, buy a few things with it, sell things for it. Like just get familiar with how the whole thing works, because you want to be prepared for when things go mainstream. You do not want to be scrambling, because if you don't know how to use the new financial system when the old is collapsing, someone will be happy to show you at a 20 to 50% premium, and not everyone can afford that.
Okay. Great. That's a very great closing thought. So, what's the best way for people to find your podcasts and blog information?
Yes, so I here's what the easiest way to do is something called Cointree. So it's cointr.ee/the desert links. Not desert Linux. Desert is in dry place. Links is in kitty cat. And that's a big store of like not just my crypto addresses for donations, things like that, but also all the links to the various social media and blog sites and things like that. Um, and there's so many, and I'm trying all of them out just to be absolutely sure. But primarily, I focus on posting content to library LBRY. So if you the main channel I do that on is something called a Digital Cash Network. Now we're getting the complicated stuff that no one's going to remember. But if you look up Digital Cash Network on lbry.tv or on YouTube, that's where most of my, especially the crypto related content comes out. But otherwise, Cointree or cointr.ee/the desert links. And I'll put that in description. And also look up those other things, like for example, how to buy stuff with credit cards and a few other things, just so you have that on hand.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much. This went, we're hour and 15 minutes in, so this is great stuff, great information, and thank you again for doing this. I apologize for the technical difficulties. This is the first one, so we'll work the kinks out moving forward. All right, have a good.
Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good night.